In conversation with Psaros, Psaros is the author of From Struggle to Strength, A Father's Journey with Autism and the Power of Hope and Positivity. A devoted family man, he has been happily married to his wife Michelle for 24 years and is a proud father of two sons, Costa Goose and Mixoma Max. Originally from the steel town of Weirton, WV, Psaros has called McDonald home for past 2 decades. With a Bachelor of Science in Industrial Engineering from the University of Pittsburgh, as well as minors in physics and philosophy, Pissarro has a strong educational foundation. Further expanding his expertise, he obtained a certification as a health coach from the Institute of Integrated Nutrition. Professionally, Pissarro served as an executive neuroscience account specialist for AbbVie. Ari is on the board of director for the Autism Caring Center, president of North Fayette Township Park and Recreation Board, vice president of the All Saint Greek Orthodox Church in Weirton, and one of the founders of North Fayette P.A.L.S, an organization for special needs children. Ari is an avid reader, enjoys strength training, running, martial arts, and lives to serve others. He has a saying that if you are breathing air, you should be helping others. And in today's episode of Auto Interview, it's my joy, excitement, and pleasure to have on the show today Ari Psaros. How are you doing today, Ari? Welcome on the show.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor to be here. The sun is out. I'm in a good mood, so I'm anxious to talk to you.
Absolutely quite great that we are here to sit down and have a conversation around your amazingly reading title. So thank you very much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So Ari, I need to first say that I was quite impressed by your From Struggle to Strength, A Father's Journey with Autism and the Power of Hope and Positivity, which I found the description of it to be quite amazing, quite crucial, quite important, quite beautiful, and quite resonated, especially it is quite uncommon as well. I need to mention that too. But then I like you to run us through the background, the foundation, the making of this book, why you decided that you needed to write a book and title this, what led you to taking this path? What led you to writing From Struggle to Strength?
It's a great question. And my son, Gus, who's currently 21, he's a soon to be senior at Kent State University in Kent, Ohio. But he
Mm,
was diagnosed at 3 years old. I decided at that point to immerse myself in not just helping my son, but helping the greater community here in Pittsburgh. And I was very active in fundraising, speeches, conferences, and I start seeing a theme. So I'm going to go back to 2014.
mm,
We had in Pittsburgh a publication called the Autism Notebook, and I was one of the, if I think, the only father to speak at a conference that they had.
mm,
And what I noticed about midway is a bunch of mothers starting to line up.
mm,
And I start counting. I'm going, wow, I'm beyond 10 at this point. And I actually comically sat and wondered if I said something offensive, but I didn't. And what I noticed was, and you can picture this in their eyes, you could see tears, you could see emotion, frustration. So when I finished my speech, I
yeah,
walked down to the side of the stage and they physically grabbed me and
mm,
said, Harry, we need your support. We need your help. Our husbands aren't on board. Our boyfriends aren't on board. We're doing this alone. We're stressed out. Or a few said, ours, they're there to help us, but they're not where you're at. They're transient. They're kind of transient in and out. So I went home and I looked at my wife and I said, boy, this seems to be an issue. And I ended up speaking with a number of those fathers. I had cups of coffee. I had dinner with one. I had lunch with one. Two
yeah.
didn't want to speak to me, unfortunately.
Oh,
And then fast forward to about 2 years ago, I gave the first keynote address as a father at the Autism Caring Center, which is an amazing organization here in Pittsburgh, at
mm,
their Mother's Day conference to about 400 mothers.
mm,
When I finished that speech, the same reaction. I had mothers coming up to me, grabbing me. I had people telling me a male voice needs to be heard. I
yeah,
had people telling me their husbands weren't on board. So I said, that's it. I grabbed my speech. I looked at my wife and I said, this speech, I'm just going to blow it up. I'm going to put it on steroids. But I
Mm,
need to write a book that might be a breakthrough for those belligerent fathers that were unaccepting of the diagnosis,
mm,
and B, I'm a motivational guy. I'm a positive guy by nature, and I wanted a motivational book for parents with children on the spectrum in general. And that after that really came from struggle to strength. So from struggle to strength is about 150 pages or less,
wow.
and it's reflective of the speech that I delivered. Now, the reason I kept it thin, um, I personally have so much experience with these fathers that were halfway in or not all the way in. And I knew that if you handed them War and Peace or J.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit, which is really thick, they would throw it out the window. I wanted a powerful, effective, easy, quick read. And that's where I came up with my book. So that's the origin story. And I will tell you, the formula has worked. I'm really, really honored to say that I've heard from parents, I've heard from fathers all around the world, and it's so heartwarming to hear from these people that tell me that they had a paradigm shift after reading my book. It's been awesome.
Oh, wow. That's a beautiful feeling, really. That's an amazing one. Congratulations on this lovely feedbacks, amazing reception you've got so far on this book. That is quite commendable and quite worthwhile. Beautiful read.
Thank you. I tell people all the time, if you open up your heart to the world and you give back, the
Absolutely.
universe gives you back tenfold. And
Yeah.
and it's part of the concept, the Greek concept of philotimo that I talk about in my book, which is good for the sake of doing good and asking nothing in return. But what I found is by sticking to my philosophy of philotimo in writing my book and helping people,
Mm.
it's just been so rewarding to hear from so many people knowing that you're helping others. It's been great.
Yeah, that's an amazing one. Congratulations. Ari, writing about your experience as a father, navigating an autism diagnosis must have brought up a lot of emotion for you. Now, I wanted to ask you, what was the writing process like for you? Was it in what sense more like an healing journey? Was it in another sense challenging for you to write? Or is it just a combination of both or something different? That's not even included in healing and challenging. Could you tell us what the writing process was like for you as a father?
First of all, I'll tell anybody if you have an experience, and Malcolm Gladwell talks about the 10,000 hours.
Mm,
If you have 10,000 hours in anything and can write a book, it will change your life. Let me say that first.
mm,
Second of all, the catharsis for writing the book was amazing. The hardest chapter to get through, and keep in mind, I had in mind I wanted a condensed book.
yeah.
If I wanted to go in depth on our experience, that first chapter could have been 200 pages. And I'm not exaggerating,
Mm,
but having to sit down with my wife, go back over every step in our journey from initial diagnosis to now, was extraordinarily cathartic, at times very painful because you're having to open up wounds.
mm,
And on the flip side, when we were finishing, I looked at my wife and I said, we've been through this journey together. We've done everything we can for our son. And it was really, really rewarding as well. I've heard from so many people telling me that they see my son as a beacon of hope. And it not only means a lot to me, it means a lot to him. And it's been humbling, but it's such an amazing experience. And what I found, anybody that wants to write a book, pick the time. Your brain is going to tell you when you can get the most out of it. And
mm,
I would wake up really early in the morning. I would take a high powered nootropic to activate the brain, and
mm.
I would just type and go back over and read. And I found the mornings were not that I didn't try at night, but it was funny for the few paragraphs I could produce at night. I could produce half a chapter in the morning and just kind of review it and clean it up. But it's been an amazing experience. And again, I would encourage anybody, if you have something to tell the world, don't talk about it, do it. Write that book.
Mm. Oh, wow. That's an amazing advice as well. That's an amazing answer to that.
Mhm.
Thank you very much for sharing. And you also know, Harry, in your experience, why do you think fathers often struggle more with accepting an autism diagnosis? What helped shift your perception during this time?
I have dealt with many. I've
Mhm.
had, and it's interesting, they come in different degrees, but I will say this. If you want to split them up into two categories, first you have the macho father, the egotistical father, and they simply cannot fathom that they sired or had a child that might have a delay or special needs or anything to that effect. It is beyond their comprehension. So they want to fluff it off and say, well, these kids are introverted. Or, you know what? 10 years from now, that autism thing you're talking about is going to go away
Uh,
when we know it's not going to happen. Then you get the fathers that are on board, they grasp what's going on. But I
mm,
say this all the time. If my son is outside throwing a football and it hits him in the head and he has a cut, I just go and I put a band aid on it. That's an easy fix.
mm,
Men want to fix things, it's in our DNA. When you hear your son or daughter has autism, it's a very weighty diagnosis. So what happens, some of the fathers that are, especially the ones that are very analytical, are stoic from the over analysis of what's going on, and their stoicism comes across as being cold or unsupportive. So sometimes just having that conversation to go, listen, you know what you're involved with. Your wife is having to almost do this alone. You need to like really break that facade and go and help them. You're on board, they just don't know it. So
mm.
it's two separate conversations between the macho dads and between the dads that just are looking for the right path to take to help their family. But I think those are the two predominant categories I see the men fitting into. And I will tell you, the fathers that I spoke with, they cannot get past their ego. I've had to have some really tough conversations. You know, the two things I remind them, the number one job of a true man, a father in a relationship, is to take care of their spouse and their children. So if you're not doing that, I'm questioning your masculinity, which they don't want to hear that. The
Mm.
other thing I have to remind those fathers that are very belligerent, whether you believe in a higher power or not, I tell them God doesn't make a mistake. He just
Mm.
doesn't. So, what I realized after I accepted my son's diagnosis was God saw something within me and saw something within my spouse or my wife, Michelle. He
Mm.
saw our inner strength, our desire to help our son, and he chose us. And I felt very actually humbled the more I thought of it that way. I
Mm.
mean, I don't talk about religion a lot. I'm Greek Orthodox. Here's my cross. But I have a very strong silent faith. And,
Oh,
and I tell people it doesn't matter who you worship. If you do, ask yourself, do they make a mistake? And they don't. You were
mm.
selected.
Yeah.
So drop your ego, amplify your humility, and go and do everything you can on a daily basis to help your son or daughter.
Oh, wow. That's an amazing answer you've got in there. Wow, beautiful. I'd like you to raise the book to the camera if you have a copy there with you.
Sure, sure.
Look at
And
that.
again, this is the cover. It's called "From Struggle to Strength: A Father's Journey with Autism and the Power of Hope and Positivity." One thing you're going to see, and I've had a lot of questions about this: why the gold boxing gloves? So I boxed, and I'm a martial artist, and
Mm.
I wanted to bring a warrior's mentality to raising a child on the spectrum. And let me define that.
Yeah.
I saw every day when I woke up is a new day in the ring or sparring in a karate dojo, which I've done many hours of. And
Mm.
the day I decided to take off from helping my son is the day I dropped my guard. And anybody that knows anything about basic fighting, you never drop your guard.
Mm.
So I wanted to bring that spirit and mentality to the book. You're going to read a lot of Sun Tzu quotes, a lot of Bruce Lee, a
Mm.
lot of David Goggins, who's an author I personally
Mm.
like because he's no nonsense. So I wanted to bring that edge to the book. And I also knew that this would resonate with that ego machismo driven father that might not buy the diagnosis. I wanted to bring that little bit of an edge. So it has resonated well. I've had so many questions on the cover, and once I explained why I did it, I think it's really, like I said, resonated, and people love the whole concept.
Mm. Oh, wow. That's an amazing answer you've got in there. Quite beautiful and quite awesome. So basically, this book was inspired based on your child's diagnosis, right? So basically, his
Exactly.
diagnosis is what brought you to becoming an author. This is your first ever written book?
I don't want to say it's the first, but let me say this.
Yeah.
There's a Mount Rushmore of incredible warrior mothers in the autism space. If I were to turn my iPad around, I probably have upwards of 300 plus books, 50 of which
Wow.
are on autism. And there, this Mount Rushmore of mothers, actually, three of them were recently on the, I think it was Good Morning America here recently. But
Mm.
long story short, I've been able to introduce them in different speeches here for the Autism Caring Center in Pittsburgh. And I would stop and ask each one, name me five prominent fathers nationally in the autism space. Every single time I get a blank look. Then they would throw out maybe a couple podcasters, which is great. That's great. What you tend to find with males nationally, at least in the States, is if you get like someone like here, I'm here in Pittsburgh. We have Dan Marino, Mario Lemieux, which are two well-known athletes, one football player, one hockey player.
Yeah.
They both have a child on the spectrum, and they both started a foundation. That would go for Joey Porter here in Pittsburgh as well, who I met that has a school. But none have written a book. So I started researching, and there's very, very few male voices in this space that have written
Yeah.
a book. So
Absolutely.
my goal was to become one of the most preeminent male voices, if not in the nation, on an international level. And within 1 year, my book has gone international. We're launching in four languages
Wow.
between right now and August. We're launching in Greek, French, German, and Spanish.
Wow.
So we want this to be a universal book, and I'm starting to work on my second after that.
Oh wow, that's a lot of accolade. That's a lot of accomplishment. That's you flying with this book. I mean, you're breaking barriers with the book. You're jumping, you're moving forward with the book. And I love your enthusiasm even from the answer you're giving so far. I could feel the raw passion you've got for the subject title. I can feel the raw your enthusiasm with it, your passion for this topic on itself. It's quite commendable and quite admirable. Thank you very much. That was impressive.
Thank you. Hearing from people, interacting, I mean, people like you. I met so many incredible people around the
Mm.
world, especially when you find out you're helping someone, it just fuels your spirit. So,
Yeah.
am I passionate? Absolutely. I'm really, really passionate about going out and helping others and using my experience. And I will tell you, I want to admit this on your show. Um, if you read my book, you'll find out I was one of those people that was a denier initially.
Mm.
I never had, he was my first child. I didn't know what to compare him to. But once we received the diagnosis and I realized my wife was 100% right and I was wrong, I knew I had to be a bigger man. I had to admit it. And I went all in from that point. I talk about the drive home from the Cleveland Clinic where he was diagnosed to
Yeah.
Pittsburgh. It's 2 hours. I
Wow.
went through 1 hour of mourning, frustration, anger, everything that a father could go to. Sometimes some fathers, it takes them years to get through that. It took me 1 hour. On the second hour, I start going into a hyper adrenalized state like I was in the boxing ring or dojo. And
Mm.
I said, it's time to fight for my child. I thought of the Sun Tzu quote, know thy enemy. And I made sure the second we were home, I ran out and I bought every book I could possibly buy
Wow.
on autism. My very first book was by Temple Grandin. I'm looking up here, and then I just went from there and bought every manual I could.
Mm.
Lack of education in this space now is inexcusable. It's all over online. You could buy books. The more you know, the better you can help your child.
Oh wow, that's an amazing one, really. Thank you for your answer to that.
Mhm.
Now, Harry, you make a powerful distinction between sight and vision in your story. Can you unpack that for us a little bit? What does that idea means to you in the context of parenting and also personal growth? I'm curious.
Sure. I thought this was a great general concept for anyone, especially if they have a child right on the spectrum.
Mm.
Sight is the day in, day out grind. And we could talk about my 2% rule. I talk about that in the book. But
Mm.
sight is what am I doing today to help my son or daughter? Where are we going? Are we working on socializing? Are we working on feeding
Yeah.
skills? Whatever it might be. That's sight. Vision is constantly updating and going, where is this child 5 years from now, 10 years from now? So, to make a long story short, in middle school, we were unsure if my son Gus would make it to college. So,
Mm.
my vision was maybe there is a great trade he could take on. Should we look for employment around here like a blue? We didn't know what to go on. So, I lucked out and I found the works of Dr. Robert Malello that wrote Disconnected Kids, Reconnected Kids. I
Yeah.
sent Gus to Brain Balance, and through the neuroplasticity, rewiring his brain,
Mm.
we start seeing drastic improvement in socializing in
Mm.
school with his grades. So he started getting 3 6s, 3 8s, and that vision piece that went from, well, maybe he'll be a blue collar worker or we'll work on something, but it won't be college.
Mm.
Then we start looking, going, you know what, he could do this. And so that vision piece changed in about a 3 year period after
Yeah.
finding the right modality that clicked. So
Mm.
again, sight is the day in, day out grind. Everything you're going to do to help that child. Vision
Mm.
is having that constant eye. Where do we go? And you know what? I know, and I'm cognizant there are scenarios where there are some severe children where you have to go, are they going to be in a home? Who's going to take care of them? These are serious discussions, but you have to have them. So we were fortunate in that our goal was college, and I'm proud to say that he's 1 year away from his first degree.
Oh, wow. That's an amazing answer you've gotten there. I love it so much. Thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you.
Now, as somebody who has written a very important book, a quite an uncommon subject line, especially among male authors like yourself, and like we've mentioned in the past, I mean, I find your book to be quite amazing and quite lovely. And I wanted to ask you, because one of the things that interests me most as a reader and writer myself is to sit back and listen to readers' feedback. I mean, want to agree with me that one of the things that makes literature to be quite complex is the way it can be interpreted by different readers based on the opinion. Some may get the message the author intended, I mean, in a very quite different manner. Now, I wanted to ask you, have you ever received any sort of feedbacks that stylishly differs from what you intend as an author? I mean, just run us through what are the kind of feedback you've written, you've got so far after the publication of this book, and how does that make you feel as an author?
Well, let me say this. The people that understand what I'm trying to do love the book. We're almost at like 90 plus reviews on Amazon, 4 star. They love it.
Wow.
The not negative, but constructive feedback, but that I've received, but people didn't get the vision. The one gentleman got a hold of me and said, "Hey, I wanted a how-to book." Literally, my son just got diagnosed, and I said to him, "Listen, this was never meant to be a how-to book. In fact, if you look at a lot of books with different modalities, which I have a lot over here, those are huge. Those are typically done by physicians. They're lengthy, and I'll
Yeah.
be honest with you, many times a little bit cumbersome. So that's been a little bit of, and I've tried to explain to people that have messaged me. In addition to that, gentlemen, I've received some of that feedback. I try to tell them this book is meant to work synergistically with those books. So
Mm.
that's been, if anything, the biggest misinterpretation. The other thing that I have heard from a few, and I try to correct them, is they
Yeah.
say to me, your child, your son, was mild, which I now they have 3 categories, 1, 2, and 3. And I think category 1 is considered mild. My child is more moderate to moderate severe. So what you put down doesn't apply. And I stop them. And I try to tactfully explain, I think it's a myopic way of thinking.
Mm.
A good example, and I mentioned it earlier, I have the 2% rule in my book. Waking up
Wow.
every single day maniacally and making sure that you improve your child 2%. Focus on one item, not 10, one item, and make sure you made him 2%. Whether your child is moderate or severe, those will still apply.
Mm.
A child that's severe, that win may not look like my son's,
Mm.
but to quote Alonzo Mourning, a former Georgetown Hoya, a win is a win is a win. And, I've tried to explain to people that the concepts in my book still apply to children with ASD, regardless of where they're at, whether they're level one, two, or three.
Mm.
So those have been some of the misinterpretations. But you know what? I don't mind that because what it's done is open up a further discussion. And I've got to know some of those people that sent me that feedback really, really well. And they now appreciate my book a little bit more.
Oh, wow. That's an amazing answer you've gotten. I must say, this is so great. This is so impressive, and I love it wholeheartedly. Thank you very
Thank you.
much for sharing with us. Yeah, thank you. And you also know, Harry, you talk about something called the 2% rule in your book. Can you explain what that means and how it's helped shape your mindset as both a father and also as an individual, as a person? And also, what's one message you hope fathers, especially those newly facing an autism diagnosis, would take away from reading this book?
So the 2% rule has resonated more than anything. And the reason I think it's resonating, which what people have to understand,
Yeah.
so a typical early day for my son, we would have therapists coming in the morning. We would have their supervisors coming in mid-afternoon. Then we have more therapists coming in the afternoon. It's a cacophony of activity with a lot of people telling you, well, they would talk about my son. Gus needs to work on this, and Gus has to do this, and Gus has to work on this. And by the way, you might be out at a park and you realize that he's a little behind some of his other peers on, you're
Mm.
taking mental notes, and it can become cacophony. So what I decided one day is I woke up and I thought about the martial arts, and a
Mm.
punch is a good example. You're a white belt, so you walk in and you throw your arm out straight. That's
Mm.
great, but that's not a punch. You start to learn as you progress up to the black belt level, your hips start from the roots of your feet.
Yeah.
The rotation, the rips, the rotation of your hips, the extension of the right knuckles. So it's incremental steps to get better. So what I decided was to implement for myself what I call my 2% rule.
Mm.
Instead of a cacophony of 20 items, I would pick one. So let's say
Um,
today's social skills. I'm going to work on making my son 2% better. And if we have any other wins on top of that, or it might be a new food texture we're trying, or something to that effect.
mm.
If there are any other wins that day, that's icing on the cake. But what it did, it eliminated the cacophony with it. It would almost slow you down. You would be overwhelmed thinking, I got to do this and this. And no, 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 no. I know exactly what I'm doing, picking the one thing. So what
Yeah.
happens is small victories add up to be massive victories down the line. I recently gave a keynote speech in New York City at one of the largest research galas in the nation,
Wow.
the Masonic Medical Research Institute. They're doing incredible work.
Mm.
And I gave them a quote in the beginning and talked about how small victories lead to a big victory. At the end of my speech, I told them, let me introduce you to my big victory. And I had Gus stand up, my son, and the place went crazy. But it is true. You work on those little wins every day and
Mm.
just stay patient, and you're going to see that child improve over time. These
Yeah.
children are never going to be perfect, but you can help them assimilate in society and improve on a daily basis.
Mm.
But you would ask me what advice I would give to a father. And I've been asked this, and I had to push it back onto me and say, what would I have said to a 20 something Harry Psaros? And I would put my arms on my shoulders and go, Harry, it's going to be okay.
Mm.
I think people need to hear that message. Just because your child has been diagnosed doesn't mean the world comes to an end. You
Yeah.
still have your child. You could still wrap your arms around them.
Yeah.
You could still nurture them. You could watch them grow. Um, it's life doesn't end because you receive the diagnosis. And I understand that spiral that they get in. They're distraught, they're upset,
Mm.
but I would go and grab every one of those parents, fathers, mothers, and go, breathe, and it's going to be okay. You're gonna be all right. Once you get in your rhythm and get your child some help and therapy and things like that, you're going to be fine. And I think that'd be the main message I have is to just grab them and go, exhale. You're going to be okay.
That's an amazing answer you've gotten there, and I am so impressed with it. And it's quite beautiful. As you're answering that, I can imagine, I was like, it's even going to give some sort of pride. I'm sure your son will be very excited to have, oh, my dad wrote about that. That's quite impressive. That's quite amazing. I do have an autistic friend in Nigeria who wrote a book about autism as well. And I was like,
Oh,
oh, that's quite an amazing one, really. So it's I can imagine what kind of you will be proud actually of that. Oh yeah, excited he did wrote a book of that nature, and that's quite beautiful, really. Yeah, and you introducing him as one of the best thing that's happened to you in a long while. That's something beautiful as well. Yeah, that's an amazing one. God, that section got me smiling.
and I would tell parents this too. Looking back now, I mean, we've been through 21, well, let's say 17, because he's 21, 17 years of a journey. But
Mm,
um, Michelle and I, my wife, we're better, stronger people
right.
for going through what we went through. And when I mentioned my son was mild, what I want to emphasize, our path wasn't easy. We had therapists. We have, and I let me say this: my son has primary ciliary dyskinesia, breathing disorder. He has Tourette's. He can't hear out his right ear, and he has autism. We've never given up though, and
Wow.
through all that, and through unrelenting love, he has persevered.
Mm,
And looking at it now, I think we are really stronger as a couple, and we're stronger as people for what we've been through. And we're able to relay that to our son to make sure to have him understand that he was handed a lot of tough cards, and he's
yeah,
worked his way through them. So perspective is very important in life, to
yeah,
sit
it
back and
is.
look back and go, maybe we're not as bad as things look. So I hope people get that when they read my book. And I'll say this: I don't hide. You have my if they Google me, they'll find my website or anything. I'm always willing to have an open conversation with any parent that needs someone to bounce something off of.
That's great. That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you for producing the in avenue for people to reach out to you. Quite beautiful. And now, just apart from struggle to strength, do you have any other works you've authored or say currently working on?
I am starting on my second book. I'd like to write a trilogy for fathers. The second book might be more specific to dads, a dad manual. In the third book, the beauty in everything I told you, I just told you about all the dads that might not accept the diagnosis.
Yeah.
I have met double the amount that are remarkable. I mean,
Mm,
remarkable. And I'd like to do a book highlighting a dozen dads, maybe more, that are
mm,
doing it right and doing it at every level. So whether it's mild, moderate, or severe, I guess that's my term. Now they call it 1, 2, and 3. Um, but I'm a little unsure as to which one I'll do first. But
mm,
I'd like a trilogy of books to make available. And like I said, we're really expanding from struggle to strength. That will be an
wow.
international book
Wow.
in different languages. So I have a lot of work ahead of me. I'm working on it now. I've been doing a lot more speaking. I've been in New York speaking. I just did a book signing in the Hamptons in New York, and
Wow.
so things are really progressing nicely. And like I said, my goal from the get go has remained the same. That's to help as many people as possible.
Quite amazing, quite commendable, quite impressive, quite outstanding. Now, just in case we have some viewers who are watching this interview and would love to get a copy of From Struggle to Strength, on what platform is it available on for purchase?
From struggle to strength is available. Look for the gold boxing gloves or Harry Psaros, but it's available on Amazon, Kindle, and Audible. And if you get the Audible, you're going to listen to a lot more of my voice. I went to the studio, and I have to tell you, even at 150 pages,
Mm,
recording an Audible is not as easy as people think.
ah, yeah.
But it'll be on those three platforms: Amazon, Kindle, and Audible. Again, it's available now, and you can also, we're launching between July and August. We'll have it available initially in Greek, Spanish, and German, and then French will be coming out very soon as well. So
Mm,
I'm really excited about that.
that's
And if anybody wants to learn anything more about me, just go to harrypsaros.com. Harry, Harry, then Psaros.com.
Hmm, that's a great one. And I left a link in the description part of this interview or interested viewers can get a copy of Ari Psaros' book directly on Amazon and Barnes& Nobles on his website and also on other platforms. I also left links to his social media pages for possible followings. So thank you so much, Harry, for accepting the invitation to come up and talk about your impressively written From Struggle to Strength, a father's journey with autism and the power of hope and positivity. This is really impressive, quite educative, quite inspiring, quite entertaining. And I must say again, thank you very much for coming on.
Oh, this has been my pleasure. Interviews like this help me spread my message, and like I said, I can't thank you enough. And it's the questions have been great, and I've enjoyed our conversation.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure as well.